Good afternoon, everybody, and thank you for joining this Build Back Better webinar. Sorry we're a little bit late. This is the fourth one in the series, and we'll be discussing the action points of the GMCA's recently launched Greater Manchester Living with COVID Resilience Plan. I'm John Quinton Barber, founder of Social, a communications agency based in Manchester, and I'll be chairing today's webinar, which has been hosted by the Growth Company and the Greater Manchester Local Enterprise Partnership. I'm delighted to be joined by Andy Burnham, Mayor of Greater Manchester, Councillor Elise Wilson, Greater Manchester Combined Authority Lead for Economy and a member of the Greater Manchester Local Enterprise Partnership, Luke Cordwell, Co-Chair of Greater Manchester Local Enterprise Partnership, and Mark Hughes, Chief Executive of the Growth Company. Over the next hour, we're going to be highlighting how the COVID Resilience Plan will support the Greater Manchester business community to recover and grow. If you'd like to join in and submit a question, please do so, and I'll try to ask as many as I can in this hour that we've got together. If we're pushed for time and I don't get round to asking your question, please be assured that your question will be captured and will form part of an FAQ which will be uploaded online in the coming days. Before we begin, I just want to add a personal note that I too am a business owner with 40 colleagues to look after, and I know how damn tough these last 6 months have been. And despite the massive challenges ahead, we all genuinely want to contribute to building back better. So I've got a ton of empathy for everybody who's on this call today. So without further ado, good afternoon, panel. I hope you're all okay. Andy, I'm going to go straight to you because I think it's only right we come to you straight away because we need somebody just to explain where we currently are in this landscape, which is moving every minute or every 10 minutes. Good afternoon, Andy.
Good afternoon, John. Yes, it really is, and it is tough. So maybe I'll use my 5 minutes just to give people as clear an update as I can on the current situation. I'll start with a statement of the obvious. Living with COVID is proving harder than we thought. I think it always was going to be tough, but I think Greater Manchester has been very much in the spotlight over the last few weeks and months. And it's obviously a day-to-day, week-to-week decision process we're having to do. It's a challenging situation, but we are trying to get through it as best we can. Just as I said this at the time, but I do think one of the reasons we're in a difficult position is that the national lockdown was, in my view, released too early for parts of the north, because the cases were higher here, and I think we've never really quite recovered from that. We had a high number of cases. We saw, obviously, the reopening, never been able to get them down to a level that is more manageable and safer, hence a very, very difficult summer that we've just... John, when I've kind of addressed these events before, I've said, that the first line of defence against COVID, and therefore the most important thing to support business reopening and continuity is NHS test and trace. And without going into all the details, it's clear that it's not working for us at the moment. Testing is an ongoing problem, and it's particularly got difficult again in September as the call on capacity of the system has increased with schools going back. So, that is an ongoing problem, and leaders and I are discussing that all of the time. We need a testing system that is more accessible for people than it currently is. But then if we look at tracing as well, on the current figures, just over half of people who are named as the contacts of people testing positive are successfully traced. So if you put it in numerical terms, that's over 2,000 people every week who are close contacts of people testing positive, not being reached by the national system. And that is obviously a real concern for us. And then there's the question of isolation, because those people are meant to be contacted and asked to isolate. Yeah. And it's still the case that some people find that very difficult to do in Greater Manchester because of the lack of income that they may suffer by isolating for 14 days. So, John, to answer your question, it's tough in terms of the case numbers, and the GM authorities are in that top 10, top 20, Bolton top of the whole lot. So the question is, what do we do? And leaders have been debating this today. It's our view, and very much thinking of all of you on this call, businesses, that we want always to argue against blanket restrictions on businesses that will cause even further hardship on top of what, as John said at the start, you've already been through. So what we're trying to do is do the right interventions up front in a targeted way, so that we don't end up with those blanket restrictions imposed from a national level that often, in my view, kind of may look like something is being done, but is it actually being done, given the lack of public buy-in sometimes to those moves, and the fact that they are blanket by definition, i.e. they're not necessarily getting us to the heart of the matter. So what I've been saying to the Greater Manchester system in recent days is we need to have more focus on test, trace, isolate. That is where it all comes from here. The confidence and the business confidence will come from having that under a much tighter grip than it is currently under. And what I'm about to put to the government on behalf of the 10 Greater Manchester leaders is that we take more ownership of this, particularly the trace and isolate element of it. So just to say a little more, on the tracing, if we had more local control, we are certain that we would reach those 2,000 or more people who aren't currently being reached. The national operation, which is quite remote, doesn't get through to them for a variety of reasons, and we want now to have that ability to take control of that situation, get the data related to those people, and make those contacts ourselves. And that's a proposal that will be going into the government from us tomorrow. But then separately, and I do need to mention this, and Mark may touch on it as well, this question about the isolate piece is really important, because we've both got to find the people at risk of spreading the virus and then support them to isolate. And I'm going to be making an appeal to the Greater Manchester community here, and particularly the business community, to help us with this. It can't be in any business's interest to leave somebody in the workplace who's symptomatic or at risk of becoming symptomatic, with all of the risks that poses for business continuity. I think we've seen in the last day or so a solicitor in Bolton shut down because an outbreak went right through the office and has led to the whole place being closed. That clearly isn't anything that anyone wants to see. So what we are saying to businesses, support your employees to self-isolate if they are requested to do so. I think a number of people in the lower wage occupations, or let's say the less secure positions, aren't coming forward with those requests to self-isolate because they fear that they won't be paid or they won't be supported. And what I'll be looking for in the next couple of weeks, working through Mark and the Growth Company, is commitments from GM businesses to say, no, all employees can self-isolate. They can do the public duty that's being asked of them. And we will make it clear to our employees that we will cover the cost of doing that so that they can do what they're being asked to do. So this is where we currently are, John. I mean, I'll probably leave it there because I realise I'll probably
No, I think it's been really helpful, and I think, and I do urge people to go to GMCA website to download the Living with COVID Resilience Plan, which was launched at the beginning of September, because I have to say it's hugely comprehensive, and reassuring. So there's a lot in there, which the links will come up later. And he talks about test and trace as well there, and there's going to be some links put up towards the end of this webinar about some news around that, I think, from the Growth Company. But Lou, I just want to bring you in because obviously the LEP has been working massively over the last 6 months, as we all know, on priorities, and it'd be good to understand what the priorities have been and the developing of what you're calling the economic proposition.
Yeah, thanks, John. So I think I guess we've touched upon this theme already, but echoing the thoughts that we knew we were going to be living with COVID rather than living in a post-COVID universe. That's become apparent over the past few weeks. Hence the strategy. And yeah, to echo Andy's point, that's turning out to be a lot harder than we perhaps anticipated. And I think, I speak to businesses up and down the country and a lot of people, in our kind of Greater Manchester area. And I think it's such a massive test of leadership, isn't it? Whether we're leading a family or a school or a business, this is we're facing these kind of challenges on a daily basis, and there is no Harvard MBA, you know, there is no manual, there's no book, because we've never done this before. So I think, you know, we're very focused on that, in the sense that we've kind of got one foot in the now, you know, and there are some real challenges happening now for businesses. Sadly, I do think those are not going to get any easier. They're probably going to get worse as we head into October and the winter. I think we're very realistic about that. And at the same time, you know, we're really trying to hold on to that vision of Build Back Better, and make sure that as we do kind of begin to make some of the bigger strategic decisions and some of the, you know, the larger kind of strategic decisions, that is true to the belief system and the North Star that we've kind of set out in all of that thinking so far. So you know, we're leading on a kind of economic proposition, we're calling it, but actually what that does really is build on the spirit of Build Back Better, you know, which Build Back Better talks a lot about what we don't want. This really begins to define what we do want, what success looks like, and specifically for the LEP, which is obviously one part of the GM machine, which are the bits that we can support most and we can spend our energies on most and hopefully make the biggest difference. So we're set to share that, building on the kind of the agile plan that we've seen in the 1 year strategy over the next couple of weeks. And that will really drive a lot of our energy and behaviour and our kind of relationship with the wider business community, and trying to make some of those things happen. But I think, you know, we continue really, I guess, to work with the wider GM machine and to be that voice of business, working with Mark and his team, you know, to hold on to what I do still think, even though it's hard, is an opportunity in all of this. You know, there are some growth areas. There is an opportunity to really ask ourselves some of those big questions and think about not necessarily what's always the easiest thing. You know, the kind of supporting employees to isolate is a really good example of that. It's about doing the right thing, not necessarily always the easiest thing, because we all have a part to play in rebuilding the economy. So yeah, so for us, we need that proposition, because we need to have a really consistent story when we talk to government, when we talk to business, when we talk across the north, and also we need to be pointed on where we're going to put our energy, so that we can make the biggest difference in, you know, in reality, what's a relatively short period of time. We need to begin to plant some of those seeds now. So yeah, great to kind of have more interaction today with the business audience, and a lot actually of the questions we've had and the thoughts we've had. And I can see Selena Hanley's in there, Selena, who has more ideas. So those thoughts and ideas have really helped to shape what it is that we can do as the business community, and so we really do welcome those. And I know, you know, Mark's team obviously work very closely with business and get to see a lot of those and shape those ideas as well. So again, we welcome more dialogue, and all that dialogue today has really helped us to think about the what next.
Thanks, Lou, and thank you everyone for your questions. We'll come into them in a second after we've heard from Mark. And think, just to add to that, Lou, I mean, what we're asking here, it's a grim time for business. It's a grim time for everyone, you know, and the uncertainty that's around us, and the challenge that you've got, which you know has been articulated, is to get people thinking about building back better, when actually quite a lot of us are thinking about survival, and that's a challenge. But you know, I think, you know, keeping it at the front of the agenda is absolutely important. Mark, good afternoon. Andy's asked you to talk about trace, but we'll come back onto that. So Mark, just talk us through, I suppose, the growth company's priorities over the last few weeks, and the Do It Your Bit campaign, and the business support programs that are available.
Yeah, where to start? I guess picking up from what Lou was talking about, the both priorities of survival and resilience and building back better actually are intertwined, really, because, you know, one of the ways of surviving and being resilient is many of the themes within Build Back Better. So, and again, it doesn't feel like it today, particularly today, this week, as it were, but again, really just to remind ourselves throughout this whole period how much initiative and innovation there has been amongst businesses and business leaders, and again, just remembering some of the positive themes that we've still got to work on. Right here, right now, our kind of major campaign is around do your bit, or probably more do our bit. You know, we've all got to do our bit in this current situation, responding to the things that Andy was talking about. And so from a business support point of view to businesses, our ask and our offer really is around a number of themes to manage the risk of the current resurgence around COVID in the workplace, with businesses centered around really, making sure the workplace is COVID secure, making sure you have done that risk assessment and that is up to date. Secondly, being flexible with your workforce, working time, ways of working, etc. Moving more into the space that Andy was talking about, really helping the test and trace effort. With the new rules now that have come out around the obligation to register people in certain establishments, and to promote the new NHS app that will be coming out shortly. So we really seek businesses to embrace both of those, and indeed they are now full requirements on businesses. And then latterly and importantly, to really support the self-isolation of employees. Clearly, it's a tricky time for businesses. That support, first and foremost, probably done in a way of can these people work at home so that A, the job can still be done, but B, they can keep their income. Can you use flexible furlough again to again retain the majority of income for these people, and not too much of a burden? And other ways for really kind of allowing people to do the right thing in these circumstances, because it's understandable, that some people, because of the income situation, may not self-isolate in the way that they should. And we've all got to try and do that, both in our kind of personal and professional lives. So it's really around asking business leaders to work with their employees to encourage and support self-isolation, because if they don't, clearly there's a risk to the business, again, as Andy pointed out, and a risk to this cascading through other businesses as well. And again, no business really wants to be the business that has been a hotspot for this as well. So that sounds all a bit threatening, but it is about resilience and then future growth of the business. So we're very much in that space with businesses at the moment, along with local authorities and other business support organizations, because it's a huge effort that's required in that space. I guess one other issue that's coming up increasingly with our conversations with businesses is back to Brexit again. I hate to raise another theme that has some challenges in it, but I think we just have to recognise that it's there. It's coming over the horizon. We don't exactly know what it's going to look like, but businesses are needing to focus their attention. So not only are they focusing on COVID, but for a good proportion of businesses, a re-engagement around the Brexit agenda as well.
What a year. Let me know, 12 months ago, Thomas got Brexit and COVID. We wouldn't have anticipated this in a year. There's a great question coming. Thank you for your questions. Paul Anthony Hamlin, thank you very much. Are we liaising with the organisations who are championing the Good Employment Charter to see if what they're doing is remaining consistent with the message despite the pressures being applied? It's a really good question, that, Paul, and I don't know who else to answer that. Is that Mark?
Yeah, I can. I'm sure Andy will do it. Yeah, so the elements that I just talked about are absolutely the conversations that are taking place with those who are both members and supporters of the Good Employment Charter, and would be see a way of evidencing that they're in the spirit of that. So it's a fairly straightforward answer, actually, in terms of yes, we are, and we'd like to talk to as many businesses as we can about helping them think about how they can support that.
Brilliant. I think for anyone who's tuning in, do get engaged with the Good Employment Charter. Do get engaged with the growth company, because this is where the anchor. This is where it's happening. So please do get engaged. Andy, I don't know if you want to add anything to that, or.
Yes, thanks, John. I strongly agree with everything Mark said. I think it's probably about making the business case for all of this, isn't it? Because it can sound like we're sort of asking business to help, and we are asking business to help, but it's about resilience, isn't it? Resilience of businesses, then the resilience of GM as a whole. And I think what we found through this is it's not there in the way that it needs to be, given some of the challenges that we've faced. And the Good Employment Charter is about bringing security and resilience to businesses, and we've recently taken a decision at the GM level to link public procurement through the social value framework to the Greater Manchester Good Employment Charter. So coming out, that is a Build Back Better specific, that needs to be understood by everybody. What we're saying is, coming from this, we shouldn't be giving public contracts. Well, we can't say you can't have one unless you're a good employer. What we can say is you're more likely to get one if you're a good employer. And I think that is Build Back Better, building that resilience. But it's important for businesses to say, well, we're not just going to do a token tick some boxes just because the mayor or the combined authority wants us to. If you are one, you're more likely to be more productive, I would say, more resilient. There is a kind of win-win here. And I think, this is something that we do need to embrace. I'm really grateful, John, for your support for the Good Employment Charter.
No, absolutely. And it's just get involved with that. We haven't got an imposter. We have got Councillor Elise Wilson. Welcome. Tech issues. This is the COVID times. We're amongst friends. So you're very welcome. And just remind everybody that Councillor Elise Wilson is Greater Manchester Combined Authority Lead for Economy and a member of the Greater Manchester Local Enterprise Partnership. I'm going to come to you in a second, Elise, just to maybe introduce Greater Manchester's ambition to drive faster improvements to jobs and productivity, particularly in hospitality and retail. So I'm going to ask that question in a second. Before I do that, Lou, there's a question come in, which I think is one that Lepa could handsomely answer, I imagine. And it's basically, how is GM building back better specifically for women? And that's, I think there's some work you've been doing on that.
Yeah, so I mean, this is really interesting. So I don't know if you saw, there was a piece in the New York Times a couple of weeks ago talking about who gets hit most in periods like this, and it's largely young people and women. They're the first to get laid off. They're the first people. Actually, what we've seen is a swathe of professional women really struggling in lockdown to manage school and work and all of those things. And interestingly, the kind of data shows that's kind of sat largely on women's shoulders, and we're almost taking a bit of a step back, having spent a long time campaigning to have women sat on boards and in positions of leadership within organisations. We are at risk of taking a huge step back. So I think we're recognising that in the proposition work that you'll see, and we've called that out as a specific. Actually easy win, really, in that there's a kind of overnight benefit to our economy if we can get those women back into the economy, either working for the people or also giving them the opportunity to start their own venture and start their own business. And having spent a lot of time in that world myself, there's a really interesting trigger moment with female entrepreneurs where often they've had a bit of a dream to start their own business, and many don't for various reasons, and then they get the redundancy check in their hand, and that becomes the one moment in time where they might just do it. So I think we've got to capitalise on that opportunity, because there will be an awful lot of women stood with a redundancy check, and if we can turn that into an opportunity to start your own venture, and specifically the point around childcare, the flexibility that comes with having your own business and being your own boss often works in a more complementary way than a less flexible employer might. So I think this is a really easy win for us if we can get the play right and the strategy right, and so it will for the LEP be a kind of key priority area, and it kind of feels right if we're true to Build Back Better and addressing some of those inequalities and our heritage in kind of perhaps leading the way for pioneering women, then it feels like a really natural area for Greater Manchester to kind of lead the way on from a UK perspective, because it's a UK wide issue, it's a UK wide opportunity, but I think we want to lead on being smart about how we make the most of it. And certainly a lot of the funds and support mechanisms that Mark's team have around new businesses and funding the growth of businesses, we do pretty well in GM actually in some of those funds for over-representing versus the national average in terms of the number of women that we back and the number of women we support through those funds, which, for anybody who knows the data, is abysmally poor. We're still at less than 1% of venture capital in the UK goes to female-founded businesses. So we do significantly better than that, Mark, don't we, in the kind of Greater Manchester machine.
And that's brilliant to hear. And where better place than GM for all that to foster and harness. And again, I urge anybody who's in that space now, redundancy, to think about that. Great piece on the BBC today about female entrepreneurs, women who set up in COVID time. So just do it. There's a lot of opportunity out there. Elise, good afternoon. You'll have to turn off your mic. Just give us an update, really, or please introduce GM's ambition to drive faster improvements to jobs and productivity, and hospitality and retail in particular.
Yeah, so thank you. My apologies for the difficulties in getting on today. So, but I'm pleased that I'm finally here. And finally, at one point, I thought I wasn't going to make it. But I think what's really driving us and what underpinning what we're trying to achieve is confidence. And it's about actually how we can ensure that people feel confident about going back to work. Businesses feel confident about opening. Businesses feel confident about inviting staff or customers and clients in. And I think these are the key things that are underpinning what we're trying to do specifically in that foundation economy, well, generally speaking. But when we're thinking about that, I think that's going to be really, really crucial to ensuring that we get this right. So if we're with a view to doing that, we know that a lot of work has been going into creating a safe GM, and not just in a whole conurbation or city region way, but we know if we look at taking a place-based approach, we're looking at all of those boroughs, all of those local areas where we have businesses, that they are what we're doing in those places to make it better, make it easier for them to open and be part and get back up and running and really benefit from what's been going on. And I think that's quite important, and that's quite crucial, certainly with the foundation economies, how we in a real local level support each other to do that. And I think we've know that we set up along with Sasha Lord, our nighttime economy advisor, myself and Sasha did a nighttime economy or hospitality. I can't remember what we called it exactly, but it was basically the hospitality, the visitor economy, and our cultural offer, and looking at getting people in there to create a task force to really give us the feedback we need about the challenges that they're facing, but also be able to share with them what we've been able to do, what changes and what lobbying we've been able to get involved with, and support them with that. And one of the key things that came out of that was actually mental health. With many of this industry specifically having gone through a really unknown period, many of them not open, not able to open, unsure of what the future is going to be like, under a significant amount of pressure, and the effect on people's mental health as individuals. And I think sometimes when we're talking about business, we forget that they're people that are, like Lou was just saying, probably had a dream, thought, oh, I'm going to set up, I'm going to do this thing, and now this has happened, and they're not sure, and they're facing really uncertain times. So I think the provisions that we're putting in around that as well will hopefully make a difference. But there is a long road to go still. We're not there yet, and I think part of this and part of building back better, certainly for me, is around how we learn as we go, how we make sure that we're relevant to the moment, and that we've got our eye on the long term, on the ambition, on what we want it to look like, on what we hope good GM's going to be, and what we're all working to achieve, but at the same time really relevant to the moment.
I love that place-based approach. I think that's, and it'd be interesting to see how that pans out in the future. So there's lots of questions. Thank you so much for everyone who submitted a question. I'm going to come to Selena finally. Sorry, it's been taking me a while, Selena, to get to your question here. And this is about with more unemployment, how can the gig economy and the good employment charter work together? Mark, is that something that you can perhaps attempt to answer? Is that something we can look at? How with more unemployment, how can the gig economy and the good employment charter work together? Is there a role that if you unmute yourself? Sorry, Mark. Still on mute. It's all right. No.
Something not work.
You're on. Yeah, that's it. You can go.
Okay. I was going to say, even after 6 months, you still got you hear those words. You're on mute. Yeah. So so obviously the gig economy is having particular challenges at the moment. But if you look longer term, then I think just like more formalized businesses, larger businesses, there is an opportunity for the smaller and more fluid and agile businesses that are in the gig economy and individuals that are in that gig economy to reach for the aspirations that are outlined in the Good Employment Charter. So again, you know, I would just welcome anybody from that space to engage with my colleague Ian and the Employment Charter around realising those opportunities. Because I think it's probably one of those areas that we actually, in truth, haven't explored in huge detail. It's kind of been directed at larger well, not larger companies, but formalized companies with employees as opposed to self-employed people in the gig economy. But it is, you know, the whole of the GMS is actually more inclusive of the self-employed and that gig economy to bring their standards of employment and terms and conditions, you know, into a better place. And that will obviously depend on a lot of work with the commissioners in the gig economy. And so I think there's quite a bit of work there to be done with them that could be done through a Good Employment Charter as well.
Great, especially if we think about more people becoming self-employed. That's going to be more.
Which we'll often see through, you know, when you come through a recession, you do actually see self-employment and startups grow during this period because people look after themselves and create their own initiative and drive. So yeah, it's something that will be apt over the next months and year and two.
Thanks, Mark. We just lost Elise for a second. I don't think it's anything we said. I think she's the technology in Stockport, whatever it is. There's a lot about green. Thank you for your questions. And I want to ask this because obviously you can't talk about Build Back Better without talking about environment and green. And I'm going to choose Agnes, your question, which probably is representative of quite a few that are coming in. What are the key areas focus on to ensure Build Back Better and greener? So what are the key areas, you know, to ensure that we're going to focus on climate emergency? So Andy, do you want to take that one?
I will. Thank you. Thanks, John. Thanks, Agnes. The right question to ask. So just to bring to your attention, if you didn't know already, we've got the 3rd Greater Manchester Green Summit taking place next week. So it's very much taking place as a virtual event running from the 14th to the 19th, I think. So it's right the way through the week, led by our Youth Combined Authority. So we very much wanted to put them in control of the agenda. So the priorities will be set there, really. So I'd really encourage you to get involved. I think in 100 years' time, 2120, people will look back at this moment in history and say, you could see at that point, post the pandemic, an acceleration of progress towards a zero carbon economy. I am certain myself that is what will happen, because it's where the wealth creation opportunity lies, isn't it? And the social progress can be achieved, and the two can come together. Job creation in obviously retrofitting properties, the whole range of things that need to be done, because all of these things need to be done before 2050. So why not do them now when we're trying to stimulate the economy coming out of this crisis? So I'm really confident that is what will happen, and it's my job obviously to put Greater Manchester at the forefront of that. We, just so everyone knows, we are going to be coming out quite soon with a series of statements on the future of GM, and in short, that will be our Clean Air Plan consultation. So that is happening. I know it's difficult for some people to take on board, but we will be coming forward with our plans for a clean air zone. And I am lobbying the government hard for business support to help people change their vehicles to make them compliant with the clean air zone, so there's no cost. But that's something that I think we can get right, and I think that will be both potentially a benefit to business, but absolutely the right thing to do. Alongside that, we will be coming back shortly with a latest draft of the Greater Manchester Spatial Framework, and we will be going out for consultation for the last time on the spatial framework. Believe it or not, this is about building back greener. People think the spatial framework is all about building and taking away the green. Well, no, actually, because the spatial framework will set 2028 as the date by which no new homes or buildings will get planning permission unless they're zero carbon. So the spatial framework is actually an instrument of building a green economy, and it will give protections to the to the green space that would otherwise be at risk were we not to have a spatial framework. And then beyond that, there will be more on local industrial strategy as we build towards the comprehensive spending review devolution white paper. So to answer your point, Agnes, there's going to be a huge amount of focus in this space soon, given the initiatives that are coming up. And I think it's certain that we're going to build back greener, no question about it. But the issue is, how can we do that in a way that supports business, that doesn't threaten jobs, or threaten the survival of businesses that may be quite fragile? And I know that we've got to put in place support packages to help people make the switch to green. And if they're not strong enough, then we might risk business survival. So I'm very focused on that right now. But I'm looking at a greener public transport system coming out of this, a greener housing stock. There's lots of opportunities for us here, and we've got the COP next year in Glasgow. The climate event, and I've just joined the mayors and regions steering group on that. So we are feeding directly into government as we build towards the COP next year. So yeah, lots going on, but it's the right question to ask.
Absolutely. And Amanda, thank you for your point there. Can you share the green event details, which we will?
Certainly. Well, I don't have them to hand, John, but we'll make sure somebody sends them around the group of people registered for this event.
Well, absolutely. Either get them to delegates, or Ben, if you're listening in tech, you can add it to the slide at the end. But either way, we'll get that back to Amanda. Mark, sorry.
Yeah, just one here and now point to add to what Andy has said, and it's about the green £3 billion Green Deal initiative the government launched earlier. That's put £1 billion of that aside for a moment, but basically there's a £2 billion retrofit marketplace opening, which obviously will improve domestic houses, but is also at the same time a business opportunity as well. And so, for any businesses in that sector, would absolutely urge them to register on the government site, when we can give details through the Growth Hub, to become a supplier into that marketplace, because that is like I say, a resource that is available for businesses to take advantage of, whilst at the same time greening houses. Yeah.
It's absolutely all linked, isn't it? How we're pivoting into different sectors, and obviously green is not going to go away. It's only going to be amplified with the opportunities there, which we talked about earlier about entrepreneurs and people even unfortunately being made redundant. There's this thought process here about how you can harness that, which is fantastic. Elise, I don't want to put in a spot here, but I am going to put in a spot a little bit. You talked about place, and I can't get away from place. I think it's fantastic, and the place-based approach. We had a question in from Selena. It's about trace testing, so it's a gentle one, but let me find it. It's about, we were talking about, Andy was talking about the test and trace earlier on before you came on, and she's asked a question: do you think that tests should be done in workplaces, schools, and supermarkets? So where locally, and how would that help? Just get your thoughts on that.
Yeah, so that's a good question, and it is putting me on the spot. However, I think that we have to bear in mind the current situation, and the current situation is that testing isn't at the capacity that I know I would like to see, and so we have a limited. So it would appear now that there is a limited capacity for testing, and in a space where there is a limited capacity for testing, we have to be able to prioritise who and what and where we test. I understand that there is work ongoing into getting new tests that are maybe not as reliant on say laboratory work to work that up, and that I think the sooner we can get to a reliable test in that space, then the wider we can open it up. And I think genuinely believe that test, track, trace, isolate is going to be so important to creating confidence about before, and whilst I think we need to make probably a targeted approach at the minute, certainly around those that work in health and care, for example, or those working with people who are particularly vulnerable. These are clearly areas where we need to focus again with people who are actually showing symptoms. I get the government wanting to prioritize that, and I can I support that. But going forward, I do think you're going to need to see more, and if we have the technology and if we can have the tests that give us a result basically straight away, then that's going to be as long as they're reliable, then that I think is going to be really important to creating that the confidence and the feeling of security and safety, and knowing and allowing people to do their bit. I think we need to if we're going to overcome this, it's understanding that we all have a role to play, and we're all important in doing that and making that happen. So I guess I think people would want to do that and would be part of that and be prepared to do that if it meant that the other structures were in place, and you could be supported in doing what you need to do. If you need to stay at home, isolating and being able to afford to stay at home when you're isolating is absolutely crucial, and something that I know Andy and I have spoken about numerous times, the importance of that, and how we need to see something in place to be able to support people and to self-isolate and help protect each other.
And apologies for putting on the spot there, Elise. I didn't need to do too much like that, but I think also the kind of nighttime economy, the hospitality sector, so absolutely get care and prioritization here, but for people, general public going in to enjoy the nighttime economy and for the hospitality sector, that kind of robust tests and trace could only be a good thing in terms of confidence.
Yeah, absolutely, and it's going to be, it is a real challenge for them, and I think there are elements of the sector, so restaurants, cafes, potential bars, pubs, and certain elements of that hospitality sector who have been really, following the rules and really done their bit and really made a difference and ensured that they're as safe and they're following those guidelines, and you can go and you can feel secure and safe when you're there. But there are industries, we're still waiting around theatres, nightclubs, there are the whole performing arts section. How do you perform I don't know, on stage with each other, and you can't really wear masks. You lose something in that, and how will we overcome all that, and what's going to be put in place in the meantime? It does need a national response on, definitely, because they're still in a uncertain future at the minute, and we don't have much of a real clear way through.
Thank you, Elise. And Andy, I'm going to come to you in a second about homelessness. We've had a question about homelessness, which I think we definitely should ask. But before I do, Lou, I'll come to you after then to kind of start wrapping up some thoughts about, because we're conscious of time as well. And then Mark, I'll ask himself and Elise some kind of wrap-up questions. Get your wrap-up comments. But Andy, there's a question coming in from John. He says, how can we ensure initiatives such as the Mayor's Homeless Campaign don't get derailed by COVID-19?
Well, thanks for asking that, John, because it's obviously an issue very close to my heart. To be honest, with everything else, with all the other issues we're dealing with, behind the scenes in many ways, there have been so many people working to support people sleeping rough over the last few months. I mean, we've helped over 2,000 people. And as we sort of sit here today, we've probably made progress this year because we've been able to bring so many people inside and support them. And it's that settled accommodation that helps people turn things around. Rather than being in one place and out and then in another, So as it stands, the latest count, I think we're down to double figures of people sleeping rough, so sort of 80 to 90, and it had obviously been a little bit higher than that pre-crisis. However, I think the question's right, because the economic crisis that's coming or is here and is probably going to get worse is going to obviously bring more people out onto the streets, and we're very conscious of that. And Elise would be the first to tell you that the finances of local authorities aren't such that they can, throw the money that they would want to throw at this. So it's going to require a gargantuan effort, I think, to be honest, John, to maintain the progress that we've made. But we will do our best to do that. The Mayor's charity continues to raise money outside of public funds to support our work. We've relaunched our Bed Every Night scheme, and that's operating now in a COVID secure way. The government are about to make allocations on what they call the Next Steps programme, where Areas will be given funding to create move on accommodation, so often single room flats for people who've been homeless, and we're hoping to benefit from that. So huge amount of attention going on here, but it's going to be tough. But absolutely, this is partly Build Back Better, isn't it? It's capturing the gains of what we've achieved over the last few months, and there's certainly been gains in homelessness, people working together, a real network of organisations supporting people, and I think it's kind of brought that network even tighter together, if anything. So it's going to be really challenging, John, but we've made a big difference for a lot of people this year, and we're going to need to sort of redouble our efforts, I guess, as we go through the winter.
Thanks, Andy. I completely agree, and just keeping up the momentum and hearing that momentum has been kept up is brilliant. And I think a lot of people share that and share that the sentiment that we have to do more, and absolutely Build Back Better is about the vulnerable and everyone else to bring people along. I'm conscious of time. This hour always goes very quick, which is good, hopefully, for the viewer. Lou, just to kind of wrap up from the LEP's point of view about some of the priorities going forward now and what you're going to be concentrating on. And I want to keep referring to this fantastic document, the COVID Resilience Plan, which is, I urge people just to have a read of it, because it's just detailed. So I can probably answer your question, but you talk me through the next steps for you, Lou. You'll be very busy.
Yeah, I think, there's no getting away from the fact that it's challenging, and it's going to continue to be more challenging. And the reality is, for all of us in our various guises, there's going to be an awful lot of grunt over the next 12 months, I think, to kind of make any real difference. And in some cases, as businesses just survive and keep people in a job. I think, we face particular challenges in Greater Manchester, don't we? We're facing particular challenges around lockdown, and we know that the inadequacies of the kind of national leadership and the kind of situation we find ourselves in. But I think genuinely, what you see in that document, which is a fairly agile approach to saying, okay, let's think about the next year ahead. That's what smart leadership is doing at the minute, is thinking about things in sprints, as we would term it. I think Greater Manchester at its best is it operates as a collective, doesn't it, with a clear, unified vision of where we want to get to. And I think that's public and private together, that's business and people together. That's people who are doing well with people who are in most need. And so I think that that really we're kind of focused on. As odd as that sounds, trying to be as innovative as possible and as creative as possible in the most difficult circumstances, but operating as a team, as a collective. And so that's definitely, from the LEP's perspective, is going to be what we're going to champion. And we continue to be the voice of economy and business in all of these conversations, and to hopefully champion the voice of business. So I still see massive opportunity, but I think we know this is going to be painful, and but I think Greater Manchester has a very clear vision on how it wants to move forward, and that doesn't change. It might just get a bit harder to get there.
Absolutely, and I just love the reality, but mixed with confidence, and I think that's something that we just have to live with and harness, isn't it, as we go forward into the unknown winter months, especially for businesses. And Mark, turning to businesses, and obviously your role as chief exec of the growth company, you're knee deep and at the heart of businesses and supporting businesses like ourselves. And it's just be good to get some kind of final thoughts from you about some, not visionary about where's it all going to head, but what can you say? Your microphone's.
Yeah, you were asking about priorities, I think, John. So our priorities now, and we've touched on them mainly. One is really working on this COVID secure workplace. Because every case we stop happening is a step closer to supporting economic growth. So these things aren't opposites; they're absolutely intertwined. So that's a real priority that everybody can share in. Secondly, it's managing the negative consequences that we're feeling at the moment in terms of businesses in stress and individuals being made redundant. So we've got huge effort in that area. And thirdly, it's about supporting good growth. There is growth out there. There are businesses internationalizing, developing new products, etc., etc. And we've just got to support every and sort of growth, good growth that we can get a hold of around that. So trying to create an environment and direct support for that. Those are our three priorities right now.
Thank you, Mark. And I'd urge anyone who isn't engaged with a growth company just to get engaged and look at what support is out there, because it truly is a heck of a lot of support for businesses. And it's where, that's why these guys give us all a big professional hug, because we do need it, and we need that support as businesses in Greater Manchester. Elise, coming to you, and finally to you in second, Andy. Elise, just to wrap up your thoughts really about Build Back Better, where you're at from a professional, personal point of view, but also some of the challenges over the next few months as you see them.
Yeah, and it's hard to follow, Lou, because she articulated it so well. But I guess it was what Andy said is about making the most of the gains and really remaining ambitious on that, and not holding our nerve, if you like, and going, you know what, we're going to make the most of this because we've got it now. We're not letting go, and that's like the priority around green and clean growth, and though that remaining and going, we're going to hold our nerve on it. But for me, it was the community. Throughout this, we've seen people really coming out to help each other, really being supportive of each other, really going the extra mile. And I know in Stockport specifically of businesses looking out for each other and just being on the end of the phone and going, well, we tried this, have you tried that? And that very basic support and what that's meant. And community, I think when we talk about green, clean growth and things, sometimes we miss that that's about actually the way we live, the desire to how we want to live our lives, not just addressing our climate emergency, but addressing that climate emergency by thinking about who we are and how we live. And it kind of comes back to that place-based approach, I suppose, that I was talking about the community, about where we are, and I suppose we want to see that thriving economy. We want to make the most of the gains, and we want to continue. Like, I don't see us not being, or Greater Manchester still to me is the most creative, exciting, deliverer of new, clever, exciting, innovative stuff, right? And we've got to continue doing that. We just got to find a way, and we will find a way, because we are those creative people that come up with a new way of doing stuff. So that I think is really important, and the basis of Build Back Better is about the people of Greater Manchester and where they live and work, and how they live their lives, and that is what we're trying to achieve, and that's what we're trying to pursue and strive for, is their happiness, and they're setting them up for success. Lou said there's a clear vision of the way forward, and we have absolutely got that clear vision of the way forward. And do you know what that is? That is taking everybody with us. Do you know, like, that's not leaving the corners behind. That's us all going, and we're all going together. And I think that's how I feel when I think about Build Back Better. And there are the details and the technicalities, but I think the essence, if you're asking me the spirit of what it is, then that's the spirit for me.
What a great promotional speech for Build Back Better. Fantastic. There is something called the Stockdale Principle, which everyone might want to Google, which you epitomise, which basically says we are in the mitre right now, and it's really tough, but there is going to be light at the end of the tunnel. And I think we can't not forget that. So fantastic. Andy, your job to wrap everything up as we come to a close.
I'm not sure I can do better than that. It was brilliant. But actually, you used a phrase before, John, that resonated with me: reality with confidence. I think that's probably a good summary of the Greater Manchester mood right now. It was a very sort of perceptive phrase. I think that is where we are at the moment. Elise is right. I am certain that there are better days ahead of this, but we're in that bit at the moment where we just have to sort of stick with it and keep on keeping on for a little bit. But I think the thinking that is being done does say that there is an exit route from this that will be better, definitely. And Lou was the one who sort of coined the phrase, if I remember, or kind of really pushed the idea of us getting behind the Build Back Better banner. Others have followed us since, but I think we've got to stick with it. And I think these seminars are great, and the way you've always chaired them is really good. You know, keep building it. Don't just see it as a phrase that we use for a bit and then it goes. Keep coming back to it. Keep challenging ourselves. You know, it's what we should do in this moment. They built back better after the Second World War, didn't they?
Absolutely.
So why can't we build back better now, is the way I would describe it. And we're trying to. So I mentioned all those big pieces of work that are coming soon under that banner, the future of Greater Manchester, the clean air zone, the spatial framework, work on the industrial strategy and the spending review that's coming from the government. The reason we're doing that is to go into those big moments with confidence and hopefully get more from the government, because it's clear, as everyone is saying on this call, we know where we're going. We know what we want to do. It's a London-style transport system. It's a zero carbon Greater Manchester by 2038. It's a place that is going to invest in Stockport and other towns to revive, to make sure we've got vibrant towns coming out of this. But it's also about our city centre. And John, I have gone back into the office in recent days. I'm not there today. I have escaped this cell of mine once or twice. I would say to people, do think about that. We've all got to support the city centre. That is Build Back Better as well, isn't it? You know, recognising that we need to support our businesses through this and lead by example in our own organisations. You will see tomorrow, we'll say more about this. We are going to take more ownership of our situation. I think we've been in an unsatisfactory moment where the national systems haven't been helping us, and we are picking up the consequences of those failures. I want all the businesses to know, though, we don't want to see just more and more blanket restrictions placed upon Greater Manchester and therefore on businesses. We're arguing for a more intelligent way, which is a more targeted way, and you'll see more about that in the coming days. So I'll leave it there, John. Really good, an hour really well spent. And I'll say it again, you've got all your Leeds posters up there, but why the hell didn't you beat the other night of the weekend? You let us down there, mate, and we're sore about that.
Can I just say, for the avoidance of doubt, I am actually beaming live from a very sunny Timperley. So I am in Greater Manchester, but I'm operating in Greater Manchester. I've been done for the last 20 years, and I will be for the next 20 years, but eventually I'll head back over north. But what better place to be than GM? And we could talk about football forever. I just think there's lots going on, and let's not forget that. Look at the document, download that document, read that document, because that is a region. This is a region that is actually doing things. Sadly, we're coming to the end of today's webinar, and I think we could all agree we could engage for hours about Build Back Better and the COVID resilience plan. So let's not stop. Let's keep up the momentum and this conversation going. One of the key messages from today is that although there's still work to be done, progress is being made, and real and lasting change can only happen when we all work together. We will get through this challenging time. So a huge thank you to you for joining today's webinar. I'd certainly recommend, and here's a slide, keep checking the Growth Company and the Greater Manchester Local Enterprise Partnership websites and social feeds for up-to-date information. And hopefully we've got, the GM Green Summit there, 2020.co.uk. As ever, I'd like to thank our speakers, Andy Burnham, Councillor Elise Wilson, Luke Caldwell and Mark Hughes. And again, I want to take the liberty of saying a huge thank you to you on behalf of the business community for your contributions today and for all that you're doing to help us focus and to commit to Build Back Better. This is a massive opportunity for us all, and we're going to continue to help you deliver it. And finally, to the Growth Company and Greater Manchester Local Enterprise Partnership for enabling this webinar to happen. Thank you, and until next time, goodbye.